Them. And the other thing is contact, and this is also very interesting because sometimes when I talk to customers, to salespeople, and I say, well, how often do you visit your customers? And I've heard people saying, oh yeah, without fail, I visit every one of my customers once a month, without fail. So I say, does that mean that your best customers are visited at the same period of time as your worst customers, the same as often? Oh yes, everybody once a month. That is madness. You want to make sure that you're focusing most of your attention on the best customers and least on the worst. And what you've got to do is kind of categorize your customers. Each one of your customers should have a category, A, B, C, D, or whatever. Category A is obviously the best. Category D, not so good. Now, how would you quantify category A? What would you use to measure category A? Anybody? Amount they spend is half of it. It's existing and potential business, because it's how much they're currently spending, but also how much they potentially could spend. And you put those two together, and then that would be a category A customer, obviously. And you need to plan how you make contact, because there were two things, remember: knowledge, we've got worked out now, but also contact. We've got to make regular contact, and the best way to make contact with the customer, of course, is to visit them. There are plenty of other ways, but a visit is the best way, face to face. But there's no way, if you've got 350 customers, you're going to visit them every month. There's just not enough time. So you have to work out how best to manage that. And in order to do that, you're going to use something called a contact organizer. Now, the contact organizer is a very simple structure, which you should develop at the beginning of the year. Now is a good time. Down one side of the page, you've got all the different ways in which you can make contact with your customer. A visit, obviously, but phone call, email, whatever. Along the top, you've got the different category of customer. You will decide, perhaps, that the category A customer will be visited once every month, 12 times a year. Category B, you might decide, will only be visited once every 2 months, perhaps. And the category C, only once a year. But if you only visit a category C customer once a year, there is no way you're going to make friends with them unless you find other ways to make contact with them. And you've got to be using whatever ways are available to you. And you should plan that at the beginning of the year. You might say, well, we'll phone him 3 times a year, perhaps. Email 9 times a year, perhaps. But make sure it's personalized. We're talking about making friendships here. An email which just says, dear customer, is not going to create friendships. It's not personal. You want to get personally, if you can. Fax, perhaps 3 times a year, maybe. Whatever you decide. Lunch, well, you probably wouldn't buy a category C customer lunch because they're probably not worth it, frankly. But on the other hand, you might decide to take them out or to invite them back to your place in a factory visit. Factory visits are great ways to make contact with your customer. You invite them to come to your place, like inviting your friends around for a braai on Sunday. You invite them to come to your place, but you can invite 30 customers, and in an evening or an afternoon you can get round all 30 of those customers. It would take you a month to go and visit those 30, but in one evening you can do it at your place. Very good way to cement those friendships. A mail shot, maybe twice a year. Again, personalize those if you can. A nice little technique I came across many years ago, which I've also used quite often now, is if you find an article in a magazine which you think is appropriate for your customer, you might photocopy that article and then clip a compliment strip onto that with a handwritten note saying, dear John, I was looking at this article, I thought you might be interested, regards Richard. Send that to your customer. Now when your customer gets that, he thinks, hey, Richard was personally thinking about me. Creates that personal, caring relationship. But there's nothing wrong with you photocopying that article 100 times and sending it to 100 customers. Each one will think you're personally thinking about them when you do it. And that's the target here, that personal relationship, very important. Birthday card, well, once a year. More than once a year for a birthday card's a bit over the top, I think. But whatever you decide, you fill it out for everybody, category A, B, C, D, or whatever you decided, and then put the dates in to your trace dates on your computers. So that at the beginning of each week, You press a button on your computer. The computer tells you who you should be making contact with, who you've got to ring, who you've got to send an email to, who you've got to visit. And then you plan your week accordingly. The computers, that's a very simple thing to do on a computer, but of course it takes the error out of it. So nobody slips through the net. You know exactly for the whole year how you're going to make contact. Nobody slips through the net. Knowledge, contact. Provide those two things together, and you will certainly be able to create friendships, and then your customers will stay with you forever.